coffee, tea, and rum. One day the tonguing is done, take our leave and go. At a fair in the sun town, her hair was blonde and this was around. She was made a whaler man of a row.
When I got back to the boat, it was apparent that the wind was in fact building, which I had kind of observed just from the rustling of the leaves, and of course you can feel the wind very nicely when you're up on a high place like that. But I wasn't quite ready to leave, so just kind of did some wading in the shallow waters around the island. I was kind of looking for crankbaits and just looking around the banks and just enjoying the water. Well, I waded out to the leeward point, and I noticed way back in the creek, in the very back, I noticed some sails coming out from behind the trees back there. A very colorful jib and a large main, and I couldn't tell what kind of boat it was, but obviously it's some kind of sailing dinghy that somebody must have been keeping at their dock back there. And that was pretty exciting because I really don't see other small sailboats on the lake or on the rivers. I see some cruisers, which are very far off, out on the main water, and it's not like I would be able to interact with them or be able to race them in any way, but this was a small sailing boat right there in the creek with me. That was pretty exciting. So I kind of hustled back to my boat. I'm like, I want to go talk to this person and see what kind of boat this is. So I rushed back to my skiff and got the mainsail up. The mizzen was already flying, and I was pushing the boat out to water and about to jump in, and I realized that in my haste, I just about left my life jacket there right on the banks of the island. So getting a little bit too excited. So I went and grabbed that and then went ahead and shoved off. And at first I just put the boat pointing as high as I could into the wind, and I thought I would just kind of hang out there in the mouth of the creek where there was a little bit better wind, because the other dinghy that I had seen, I could tell they were trying to beat out of the very narrowest part of the creek, trying to work their way out to the mouth. And they were making good speed, but when you're way back in a really tight spot like that, it's going to take a while to get out of there. They're just tacking back and forth for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then finally I decided I was tired of waiting, and so I just turned downwind and sailed back to where this dinghy was, just to go and say hi and see what kind of a boat it was. For how little wind there was, I could tell that it was moving fast. You figure it's probably more than likely some kind of fiberglass racing dinghy, and sure enough, that's what it was. As I started to come up closer, it looked to me a lot like a Hobie holder, and so I got up close, and it was an older lady at the helm, nice old lady. So I just kind of called out to her and said, "Hey there, it's a pretty fast little boat you got." And she's like, "Yeah, it's a Hobie holder, sure enough." And she said, "This is my first time having this boat out." And I said, "Wow, well, you're doing really good. You're sailing pretty fast there." And she said, "Oh, no, I mean, I am a sailor. I had a Hunter 30-foot or something like that." And she said she used to race Hobie cats, but she just wanted a small dinghy, and I guess she lived right there in the back of the creek and must have had a private dock and everything. And so she got that boat. And I was pretty impressed, like, how fast it could move for how little wind there was. I mean, she was really making good speed and beating out of a really tight creek way faster than what I would be able to do in my skiff. But that's just kind of the nature of a fiberglass racing dinghy like that. They weigh nothing and has like a ridiculous amount of sail. I mean, I could tell she had a ton of sail in the air, like to the point that I was almost wondering if this was more of almost a cruising boat. like something like an O'Day day sailor or mariner or something like that. But she was just kind of doing like a little racing circuit, sort of. She was just trying to get used to the boat and trying to make sure that she wasn't going to feel overpowered. It was her first day sailing it. And so I was just kind of playing around there with her, sort of not really racing because, she just has so much of an advantage on me, but, kind of following her around, and we chatted a little bit, and it was just really nice to talk to another small boat sailor. Not a common experience for me on Kentucky Lake or the Cumberland River. And it was interesting hearing her perspective on what it's like sailing in a creek, because that's mainly what I do. And she kept saying, she was like, the wind is just swirling around in a circle. I just keep following a circle. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much my assessment of what happens most of the time. It can be very difficult to get into or out of a creek like that if you're trying to work to weather. That's kind of the story of my sailing life. But if you're patient, the wind will eventually shift and you'll eventually get to where you want to go.